The reason I moved to Homeland Security was right after 9/11. I was at the Internal Revenue Service, and President Bush announced the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. And I think, like many, many Americans, we were all anxious to go and do whatever we could to help. So I was interviewed by the White House and then ultimately selected to be the first Chief Procurement Officer of Homeland Security. I would say that procurement does not run under the belief that best value means low dollar. I think that was something that probably occurred in the early to late 80s. The country has now moved to a view that best value is all-encompassing. A little bit of it is about the low dollar, but I don't think it's been that way for quite a few years. More recently, with budget constraints, people have started to really factor in the low dollar aspect of it a lot more. But as a general policy, best value means everything that you can possibly get for the dollar, including things other than price. The use of the public dollar has always been used to revive the economy. Ever since the Great Depression and the creation of some of the great agencies of the FDR administration, like the WPA and Job Corps, the public dollar is a huge percentage of the gross national product. It will always be an influencer in trying to improve our economy. That's a great question. The difference between a good contracting officer and a great contracting officer to me is a good contracting officer is able to award a contract in compliance with all the laws. That to me is the bottom standard for a good contracting officer. I think a great contracting officer keeps in mind the mission, keeps in mind the customer, keeps in mind all the other aspects. I often said that a good contracting officer just does it so that it's legal, but a great contracting officer does it so that the customer is satisfied and the mission is accomplished. The culture of innovation has to come when people are actually very, very comfortable taking risks, and they're working in organizations that will appreciate the risk, not punish the risk. That's the way I think you come about with, you bring about innovation. You also have to be very, very willing to engage the industry in coming up with new ideas on how things can be improved, and not just think that every idea has to be invented within the four walls of government. Well, within the Department of Homeland Security, the strategic sourcing initiatives are around everything that you would expect them to be. They're around information technology, weapons, uniforms, boats, office supplies, electricity, those kind of things. So every one of those commodity lines, there is a strategic sourcing initiative around, which usually involves the customer as well as the procurement people in trying to figure out how to best serve the mission of the agency. The SBInet is a major program within Homeland Security, and I would say that it has a few setbacks, but overall much has been accomplished. Miles of fence have been erected, cameras are in place. What I found handling huge projects when I was in government is that none of them go 100% well. There's always some hiccups, but with strong leadership and a commitment to the outcome, it can be successful. I have never thought of SBInet as a failure. It is just a big project. Big projects have issues. The issues are being dealt with. What I'd say to a young person that wants to go into federal government is to go for it. I have had 34 years of experience there. I've now had 5 years of experience in the private sector. I would not trade my 34 years of federal service for anything. I would say several things, especially to young people. It is not charity. You get paid very, very well. You get incredibly interesting work. You get to protect the president. You get to guard this country. I can't think of anything more enjoyable, more rewarding at the end of the day than public service. And then in my own bias is acquisition. Everything that the federal government does, it has to do working with the private sector. The only way the federal government can even get to the private sector is through the procurement process, which is the profession that I was privileged to work in for 34 years.